Hey loves, it's Emma, and I am back today to talk about hype words. And this is something about the cosmetics industry and the beauty industry on the whole that drives me crazy. As somebody who's been in the profession for 12, 13 years now, the more I learn about this, the more it pisses me off, quite frankly. And I say that as somebody who uses them. It's an inevitable thing, right? Like accountability on me for that one. But I'm a total foodie, so I think of everything in terms of how it relates to food. It's just like the food industry and diet culture and the way that they throw a word on something. And now, especially with keto being on the rise, it's full fat, whole fat, everything. And there's these words that if you just gravitate towards them and you don't necessarily understand why, it's not really doing what you think it's doing, and it might just be hiding something else. So I'm gonna call myself out first. Some of the biggest hype words that are going around right now is what we would call greenwashing. And in the world of greenwashing, eco-friendly, planet-friendly, ingredient-friendly, that's the craze, right? That's what companies are latching onto. And I do that too. That's a big part of my business, and I love it, and I love to see it. However, the more you look into it, there is almost no regulation in this industry as far as what a company can put on their bottle, what it means when they put something like organic or natural or plant-based on a product label. The FDA doesn't really get involved in the cosmetics industry unless there's consumer complaints. There's no safety requirement. There's very little banned ingredients, and most of them are actually dye additives, colors. So when we think about that and we look at that, that's terrifying. That's terrifying that there's no real true regulation. It's just kind of trusting these companies to be honest.
There's a disconnect here if you don't think you can trust us.
And I am the first one to say, don't trust anyone. Don't trust the companies. Don't trust me. Don't trust anything you've ever seen on YouTube. Like, don't trust anyone. Double check everything. Do your own research. Abso-freaking-lutely. Because that's how you end up catching when they're using these words. And sure, it might be natural. Petroleum's natural, and you don't necessarily want to be putting petroleum on your hair.
Is that oil?
Right? Oil. Now, I mean, like, think like tar, things like that. Like, all of these are natural things. In the world of makeup, it was lead is a natural ingredient, right? We don't want that on our skin for obvious reasons. And we're still finding cases of things like lead poisoning, bat guano and mascara. That's still happening in the cosmetics world because there's no accountability and no real regulation. So I want to talk about a list of these hype words and what you should really be looking for instead of focusing on this one word on the label. So like I said, I'm gonna call myself out first because I run what I would describe as a clean beauty space. And that's super important to me that I have organic, eco-friendly, ingredient-conscious products in my space. And those are some of the worst hype words right now. So when you see organic, pure, natural, clean, any of those things on a label, I have found absolutely no requirement in writing from a reputable source for what a company has to say to back those words up. So I've done a lot of research for the products that I carry in my space, and I feel confident in their practices, that they mean what they say, and their ingredient labels and all that yada yada. But the only number I've seen floating around anywhere in the whole world of the internet, and it wasn't from a terribly reputable source, is that the requirement is 1% of the ingredients have to be from a organic source, a natural source, or a plant-based source, for them to put those words on the bottle. And if that's something that's important to you, 99% being the other thing, 99% being from wherever the heck they want, doesn't really live up to that standard, in my opinion, as a consumer and as a professional. If you're gonna put organic, plant-based, natural, pure, all of those things, I wanna make sure it's more like 99% those things. There are a ton of companies out there that are 95, 96, 97% organic ingredients and plant-derived ingredients that only use, I blanked out on the word. Preservatives. They use required preservatives to keep the product shelf stable. However, even that, there's companies that are working around it and finding plant-based preservatives that work. So when it comes to sustainable packaging, when we're talking about sustainable packaging or eco-conscious brands, I personally don't trust anyone that doesn't have a third-party certification. So things like B Corp certified are great. There's a ton of them that are third-party. They have to meet third-party standards. They come in, they do inspections, and so I will drop a list of some of those third-party standards in the caption, but I don't trust it just on its own, not ever. Now this one is gonna get me some hate. I already know.
Oh, I hate you, alfalfa.
The word hypoallergenic on a label makes me laugh. And I say that as somebody who has a ton of sensitivities and allergies, and it's super important for me to avoid those things. It makes, massive differences in my health, even to avoid my sensitivities. Hypoallergenic isn't a real thing. Just like an allergist will tell you, if you have a dog that's hypoallergenic, like that's hit or miss. It's totally a gamble. It really is. It's still a gamble because hypoallergenic is a buzzword. It's a hype word. You can't guarantee that something isn't going to cause somebody to have an allergic reaction. It's impossible. I've quite literally known people allergic to sunlight and water.
What?
Like, you can't guarantee that something's not going to cause an allergic reaction. I love the concept of hypoallergenic. I love that we're trying to minimize allergens in products. But I'm the first one to say one of the products I carry has hypoallergenic on the label. But I have clients who are allergic to coconut, and that's a main ingredient. So what does that tell you about hypoallergenic? I'll let you be the judge of that one and make your own call. As a stylist that's been in the business as long as I have, because at this point I might as well be a dinosaur in this industry, honestly. Damage, anti-breakage, protein, all of those things, when I see them on a label, it really just makes me kind of go, I don't like it. I don't like it. Not because protein's bad, but because so many people have become to associate protein with good. And that's very much not the case. Not all hair that's breaking needs to be smothered in protein. There is such a thing as overproteinization. And guess what, guys? It causes all the same things as not enough protein. When you have overproteinization because you've been using the anti-breakage, the damage repair products for months, years, sometimes you've crossed the line and now you're causing breakage with an anti-breakage product. And someone make it make sense. Make it make sense. The only thing that is truly, genuinely going to stop breakage is getting a haircut. And I don't know how many times I can say that. If hair is so damaged, it's brittle and snapping, it's time to get a haircut and start changing your habits. Anti-breakage isn't a solution, it's a Band-Aid that might be making the issue worse, because it almost always means protein, packed on protein, packed on protein. And protein is good for hair, but when it's in almost every single product that you use, I promise it's too much. So take a good look at those breakage, damage, repair, all of that, and really kind of think about how often you're using it and how much, because your hair might be missing moisture, and that's why it's breaking. It might really just need more hydration, and that's why it's breaking. That's just the truth of it. It's what I've seen in a long, long time in my job over the years, is that with everyone jumping on board the protein hype train, which was great when it started, it really was. We saw so many people get healthier hair, and then they never put the protein down. They never let it take a break, never let it rest, and instead picked up a shampoo with protein and a conditioner with protein and a leave-in conditioner with protein, because they all said anti-breakage and their hair just kept breaking. It's an oxymoron, and I don't know any other way to explain it than it by itself means not a lot. One of the more recent words to hit the market is keratin. Everyone wants keratin treatments, keratin shampoos, keratin this, keratin that. And obviously keratin is an important thing for your hair. Keratin is a large part of what your hair is made of. But just like the last thing we talked about, keratin is a type of protein. And if you're using too much of it, keratin is going to cause brittle, frizzy hair instead of smoothing and helping to heal it. So keratin is just another buzzword that they're slapping on a label because it's hot right now. All right, so we're coming down to the end of the list, and I touched on this one in another video, but this is, I think, the #1 pop culture hype word right now that just is literally everywhere. Sulfate-free. Who needs it? Why does it matter? In my opinion, and I say this again, I'll call myself out, I use primarily sulfate-free products in my space. But if we're looking at it from a chemical perspective, there's very few people who truly legitimately need sulfate-free, and that's going to be people who have your fashion colors, your Vivids, keratin treatments, and most curly-haired people tend to feel better and be able to go longer with sulfate-free shampoos. However, sulfate-free is probably the closest to like fat-free for me personally. If it doesn't have sulfates, and I want to be super clear about this, if it doesn't have sulfates, it has an equivalent surfactant. If it does not have sulfates, it has an equivalent surfactant. So the main thing to know there is if it doesn't have a sulfate, it's got something else in it that's going to do the job to clean your hair. That's the whole point of a surfactant. That's what gets you bubbly. That's what gets you clean. And that's okay. Like, that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying surfactants are evil. I'm saying that sulfates aren't the bad guy either. And if you find that your hair and your scalp prefer sulfates, especially if you have curly hair, I just really want people to be aware that that's okay, that's normal, that's totally fine. Just like anything else in the world, there's degrees of sulfates, right? Like, there's low quality ones that are gonna strip the ever-loving heck out of your hair, and there's higher quality ones that are gentler, easier on your hair. Just because it's a sulfate does not mean it was created by the devil himself. And last but not least, closest to my heart, products labeled for kids. And this isn't as big of an issue in my world in the hair industry as it is in other areas of cosmetics, but it's still something to be super aware of. A lot of products that are labeled kids, for children, are actually labeled as toys. And that is a whole other ballgame. There's already almost zero regulation in this industry, like I said in the beginning of this video. And when you go to toys, there's even less. So if you're thinking about getting your kid some makeup for Halloween, I would strongly encourage you to get professional grade stuff, like even the lowest end professional grade stuff for adults. If it's marketed as a cosmetic or a makeup, it has at the very least those dye regulations and a assumption of safety testing included in it. But when it's a kid's Halloween makeup packet, don't trust it. No trust at all. Leave it on the shelf. There's so many cases over the years where those have been tested and had heinous things in them. So kids' shampoos are only slightly better. And what I will say is the tear-free situation, when you have a little bitty baby, yeah, okay, that's really cool, that's great. But as soon as you reach a point where you can rinse your kid's hair and it not run all the way in their eyes, switch them to something that's made for an adult. Because I cannot tell you how many times I've seen kids with long hair that you can't get a brush through, and they're crying and they're sobbing and they're in tears, and they end up in my chair out of pure desperation. Or they come in and tell me that they're ready to chop their little girl's hair from here to here because nobody can get a brush through it without a full meltdown because it hurts really bad. I was that kid. My hair was a mess, and I used the L'Oreal fish bottle, that distinct, like I can still smell it in my brain. The L'Oreal Kids all-in-one shampoo, body wash, bubble bath. And my hair was melted, and I see it in so many kids all the time. And if you want them to have long hair, I promise there are options that won't cause their hair to tangle and mat that way. And it really makes me, as a parent and as a kid who had to deal with the nightmare hair situation, for lack of a better phrase, it just really makes me angry that they're creating these products with kids on the label, like marketed specifically at children, that just fries the hair, melts it, and makes it impossible to run a brush through at all. Like, you can't detangle it if you were God yourself. Like, it's that bad. And just by switching to something that doesn't have the label kids on it, you'll start to find the hair corrects itself so quickly. So I'm gonna leave it at that. I think that's a ton of information for you guys to like go back out into the world with. And other than that, if you found this information helpful or educational, go ahead, hit that follow button, like this video, and hit the bell to subscribe, and I'll be back with more hair content later.